Hello, YouTubers, friend, compatriots. Foolish shows desolate sirs, peasants, vassals, Republicans, Democrats. I am a useful idiot, and today is a special day because I'm going to do a video on one of my favorite topics, and that's the fact that the Republicrat versus Dempublican paradigm is dead. The two-party system is a fraud, it's a facade, it's a tool used to control the masses and control the election cycle and make sure that the agenda of the handlers and the real people, the movers and shakers, the real people behind the scenes, the agenda continues as the so-called two-party system creates this dog and pony show, the smoke and mirrors, to create this dynamic between supposedly two different parties. Another way I like to put it, of course, is that the two parties are two cheeks on one ass and they both stink. And so my basic premise is there's really no difference between the Republicrats and the Dempublicans. And I find myself constantly having to deal with party line drones and people that subscribe completely to this false system, this false paradigm, this charade. And it's very frustrating, very demoralizing, and doesn't give me much faith in the American electorate to not be able to figure out that this is all a fraud. And it's right in front of them. And so anyway, let's get down to the evidence, though, because I don't want to just go on about how there's no difference between the two parties and not tell you why. And I've beat up on this subject considerably in most of my other videos. It's a axis by which a lot of my other ideas revolve. And so let's get down to this list. Both parties support the Federal Reserve System. Both parties support the Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke in spite of his failings. Both parties support the free trade agreements that have all failed and all the continuing free trade agreements, some which also undermine our sovereignty. Both parties support enormous trade deficits. Both parties support TARP and the bailouts. And both parties continue to support all the ongoing bailouts, including QE1, QE2, QE3, and QE4 and QE5, and everything else that is to come. Both parties support economic stimulus packages, which have failed and been misdirected. Both parties support the auto industry bailouts. Both parties support massive federal debt, in spite of all their rhetoric. Both parties support the expanding the government when their party is in power. Both parties support layers of ridiculous regulations and new laws. Both parties support the income tax and the IRS. Both parties support no oversight over derivatives. Both parties support massive Wall Street donations to their election campaigns. Both parties support the TSA. Both parties support the TSA. Both parties support NDAA. Both parties support the Patriot Act and the renewal of the Patriot Act. Both parties support unconstitutional surveillance of all American citizens. Both parties support the militarization of the police. Both parties support torture. Both parties support extraordinary rendition. Both parties support the global empire. Both parties support preemptive wars and infiltration. Both parties support the poor treatment of our veterans. Both parties put off balancing the budget. Both parties approve of free speech zones. Both parties avoid realistic reform of health care. And last but not least, both parties support their own corrupt, opulent, high lifestyle hierarchies. So all in all, I see no difference between these two parties, other than the way they like to characterize themselves. Traditionally, the liberals have been for the poor, the conservatives have been for the rich, and I pretty much see two parties that are for the rich, because they are the rich. And so that's another similarity between both parties. So I once again state that they only use all these hot-button emotional issues and social engineering issues like abortion to keep reminding people of which false party paradigm they like to identify themselves with. missing the big picture. They can't see the forest for the trees. They focus in on religion and abortion. And all those issues stay the same throughout American history, regardless of attempted changes. So, another great body of evidence that shows that whether we have Republicans or Democrats in office, the march of American history continues the same. We still have financial fraud. We still have wars. We still have social engineering issues. We still have income inequality. We still have discrimination and racism. All these issues continue, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Democratic president or a Democratic Congress or a Republican Congress or a Republican president or any combination thereof. The results are the same, and the blame game goes on. And I think there's a great explanation that Alex Jones did, where he explains how, if there's a single monolithic party that controls American politics, it would be easy to have all Americans focus in on the single demon that has to be dealt with. But if you have a two-party system, they support each other, and it constantly becomes a dialogue between this party versus that party, and creating this good cop, bad cop scenario. So they play each other off each other, and creates this illusion that we have a choice and there is a two-party system. And I think some of the best evidence of all is from a quote from Carroll Quigley in his magnum opus of 1968, Tragedy and Hope. And Carroll Quigley was an insider's insider, and he wrote this book about our modern age through the eyes of an insider, and illuminates a lot of the true agendas of everything that's gone on in modern history with United States involvement. He was also the mentor of President Bill Clinton, and he had no problem talking candidly about what is really occurring in this modern world, because he approved of the agenda. And this is what he had to say. And this is rather lengthy, but bear with me, because this says it all. This is an insider telling you that the Republican versus Democrat paradigm is a tool, a charade, a fraud, a false front in order to create an illusion to further the agenda of the elites. I quote, "The national parties and their presidential candidates, with the Eastern establishment assiduously fostering the process behind the scenes, moved closer together and nearly met in the center with almost identical candidates and platforms, although the process was once concealed as much as possible by the revival of obsolescent or meaningless war cries and slogans, often dating back to the Civil War. The argument that the two parties represent opposed ideals and policies, one perhaps of the right and the other perhaps of the left, is a foolish idea acceptable only to the doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can, quote, throw the rascals out, unquote, at any election without leading to any profound or extreme shifts in policy. Either party in office becomes in time corrupt, tired, unenterprising, and vigorless. Then it should be possible to replace it every 4 years if necessary by the other party, which will be none of these things but will still pursue with new vigor approximately the same basic policies," unquote. Well, thank you, Mr. Quigley, for spelling it out as plain as possible that the two-party system is a false paradigm. It is a fraud. It is a tool used by the true handlers, the true elite, the true people who run our government, that our presidents are puppets, and the policies are only remotely different. The two-party system, they walk hand in hand to create the military-industrial complex. They walk hand in hand to create the police and military surveillance state. They walk hand in hand to create giant government bureaucracy. They walk hand in hand for the global empire and the militarization of the globe. They walk hand in hand in endless spending of other people's money. There is no difference. I have no more time for you party line drones. Don't come to me with your fake two-party paradigm bullshit and expect me to engage you. You are useless. The two-party Dempublican versus Republican paradigm is dead. It is done. Move on to the next step. Look at the issues, look at the candidates, look at the policies as an individual, because the party system is no guide. It's a textbook for idiots. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.